Alrighty, hello everyone. Welcome back to another Screencastify lecture video. This is Ms. Bolden once more, speaking you to again from the past. We are going to continue with Unit 6, going over topics 6.4 through 6.5, Economic Imperialism. We are in the same time period, 1750 to 1900. With that, let's get started once more. Starting with our typical homework and general reminder / errands. Being first, our Unit 5 playlist that is going to be due May 16th. Remember to get that completed as you are going through this week. And just a disclaimer with that, remember that the assignment, the working conditions, is going to be a learning assignment. It will not be counted as a mastery assignment with the lecture notes for units 6 and 7. And very lastly, for missing work, if you would like to complete that, that is your ability to do so. If you are turning in missing work, just be aware that it will take a little longer for me to grade, get into the grade book, and all of those things since I will be recovering from surgery. So with that, let's get started into the lesson 6.4 through 6.5. Our objective for today, these lecture notes, is that you all will be able to explain how various economic factors contributed to the development of the global economy from 1750 to 1900. I will be using the term global economy a lot in this lecture. With global economy, all that means is the economy of the whole world. Throughout this school year, throughout the AP World History curriculum, we have started to see countries becoming more and more intertwined, more and more integrated with one another through their connections. One of the biggest spheres of connection going to be the economy. So we are going to see in this time period the development of this global economy, of a world of economies coming together to create one single economy that works all together with one another. And then our essential questions, because there's two, is what is economic imperialism and how did different regions, economies around the world develop in the 1750 to 1900 time period. We are once again doing guided notes, so as you all know, you should be filling in your guided notes with the information on the slide that is underlined for you. Remember, you can pause the video, take your time. Do not feel rushed. If you need to pause, take that time to write it and really comprehend what is being discussed. I encourage you to do so. So with that, let's get started. So, the global economic development. Imperialism is going to intensify the development of the global economy based on imports, which again just means trade, from colonies to industrialized nations. Imports is going to be items brought in from the colonies. Typically, those are going to be natural resources from areas like the Africa states, as well as the Americas. Now let's get into the thick of it. There's going to be different factors contributing to this global economy developing in this time period. First, starting with new technology. A lot of this will be helpful coming from the Industrial Revolution. And with new technology, we are going to see humans begin to control their environment through technology. We'll see that with railroads. We'll see that with steamships. And then we'll see that with the telegraph. We are also going to see increased profits, easier to transport goods. So what that means is that as there is an increase in profits, which there will be, it'll be easier to transport goods through the usage of railroads and steamships to transport those manufactured goods. Next is going to be global agriculture. A really big factor is going to be cash crops and minerals that are grown in these areas in Africa, Asia, and the Americas. They are going to be grown for export, which means to take out of a country, to trade outside of the country, to colonizers rather than locals. So this means that their farming that they did, the digging that they did, is not for their local populations. It's going to be populations outside of Africa, outside of Asia, outside of the Americas, typically going to be Europe. Cash crops are going to include things like guano, cotton, rubber, palm oil, diamonds, copper, that's a typo, as well as rubber. Rubber will be extremely influential, as we will see soon. Here we see a little picture. This is of a state currently protesting the usage of palm oil. Palm oil is super bad for the environment, if you did not know, but palm oil is essentially used in everything. We eat it, we lubricate our machines with it, especially back in that time period we did. So palm oil is a part of everyday life now, even though it is very bad for the environment. And it's also just bad for the local economies, because palm oil is not going back into their economy, it's going into other economies, sucking them dry of that resource. Meanwhile, they're not getting paid for it. So, what is economic imperialism? Economic imperialism is when industrial powers enforce their economic advantage over non-industrialized countries. And that is a really big difference to point out, is that imperialistic countries are industrialized. That is how they are able to take advantage of these other countries, is that they have machines, they have weaponry that is a lot more advanced and can do a lot more damage and makes more money when you think about machines in comparison to those countries that aren't industrialized, do not have industrialized economies. Some economic factors that are going to lead to imperialism, we talked about a little with our 6.1 through 6.3 and then 6.6 through 6.8 lecture. That is going to be cash crop agriculture. Cash crops are for the profit. They are not for the feeding of community. A big factor to imperialism is going to be just money. These imperialist powers are going to desire money, even though it will harm local economies. Another factor is going to be just control over local economies will increase profits through the through the selling of manufactured goods back into these colonialized markets. And then another big factor is going to be banana republics. These are small Latin American countries that are going to be controlled by American businesses, specifically like fruit farms, fruit plantations. And this right here is a picture of a banana republic. I believe this one is in Venezuela, I believe. I could be wrong on that one. Okay, so with control over local economies, there'll be an increase of profits for imperialist powers. So we will see this in Asia happening between Europe and then the Chinese powers, as well as in India as well. So with that, there's going to be British control of cotton exports in India. The British are also going to force trade with China for opium. If you do not know what opium is like a component to the drug heroin. It is very addictive. So with that, the British are going to force China to trade with Britain and other European powers for opium, and then it's going to circle back into the Chinese population. These are going to then result in the opium wars between the British government and the Chinese government. China is going to end up losing this war, which will cause China to lose some control and influence over trade, specifically like economics in China. And then Britain will take more control over the economics in China due to the opium wars. In Africa, there is going to be a lot of European control based on natural resources, just like in East Asia and South Asia. So cash crops specifically being cotton, coffee, and cocoa. Also, other natural resources like rubber and diamonds are going to be really big for like reasons for imperializing Africa and why there is this thing of the scramble of Africa. In Latin America, very similarly, we're going to see copper, we're going to see rubber. There will be infrastructure investments. And lastly, as we talked about with like the last two slides, banana republics. An example of this is going to be that picture that I showed earlier, and also US business intervention in the Dominican Republic. There is a lot of like banana stuff over there. And then very lastly, we are going to watch this video. You are going to complete 2 video notes. In the Google form, you're not going to be completing this on your guided notes. So with that, let's get started and watch the video.
On December 12, 1904, Chief Lontulu laid 110 twigs in front of a foreign commission. Every twig represented a person in his village who died because of King Leopold's horrific regime in the Congo, all in the name of rubber. Chief Lontulu separated the twigs into 4 piles: tribal nobles, men, women, and children, then proceeded to name the dead one by one. His testimony joined hundreds of others to help bring an end to one of the greatest atrocities in history. Beginning in the late 1800s, European countries participated in the so-called Scramble for Africa. They colonized 90% of the continent, exploiting African resources and enriching their countries. Belgium had recently become an independent kingdom. Its ruler, Leopold II, wanted to acquire what he called a slice of this magnificent African cake. Meanwhile, he read colonial explorer Henry Morton Stanley's reports about traveling through Africa. Stanley emphasized the Congo Basin's majesty. So, in 1879, Leopold contracted him to return to the Congo. There, Stanley deceived leaders into signing some 450 treaties allowing for land use. Leopold persuaded the US and European powers to grant him ownership of the Congo, pledging to protect free trade in the region. And on May 29, 1885, a territory more than 80 times the size of Belgium and home to 20 million people, was declared his own private colony by no one it actually belonged to. Leopold lost no time consolidating power in what he called the Congo Free State. He claimed land, raised an army, and forced many Congolese men to complete unpaid labor. Things got even worse when, in 1887, a Scottish inventor redeveloped the pneumatic tire, creating a massive international market for rubber. The Congo had one of the world's largest supplies. Leopold seized the opportunity, requiring villages to meet ever greater rubber quotas. Congolese men had to harvest the material from wild vines. As supplies drained, they walked for days to gather enough. Leopold's army entered villages and held women and children hostage until the impossible quota was met. Soldiers sexually violated women and deprived children of food and water. Congolese people rebelled. They refused to cooperate, fought Leopold's soldiers, hid in the forests, and destroyed rubber vines. Leopold's army responded to resistance or failure to meet quotas with unflinching torture and executions. Because guns and ammunition were expensive, officers ordered soldiers to prove they'd used their bullets in the line of duty by removing a hand from anyone they killed. However, many soldiers hunted using their guns. To avoid harsh penalties and account for lost bullets, they cut off living people's hands. They also used this practice as punishment. If rubber quotas weren't met, soldiers would sever people's hands and bring them to their commanders instead of rubber. The regime dramatically upended daily life in agriculture, causing widespread starvation and disease. Meanwhile, King Leopold built monuments and private estates with the wealth he extracted. Soon, people brought international attention to the horrific abuses of Leopold's Congo Free State. In 1890, American journalist George Washington Williams accused King Leopold of deceit, fraud, robberies, arson, murder, slave raiding, and a general policy of cruelty. In 1903, diplomat Roger Casement wrote a report that corroborated the nature and scale of the atrocities. It was published the following year. In response, Leopold appointed his own commission to investigate the accusations. They heard numerous witness statements in the Congo, Chief Lontulu's included. The report only confirmed the worst. Facing pressure, Leopold relinquished control of the Congo to the Belgian government in 1908. But this did not mean justice. The Belgian state awarded Leopold 50 million francs in testimony for his great sacrifice in favor of the Congo. He died the following year. Crowds booed his funeral procession. For more than 50 years following, the Congo remained a Belgian colony until declaring independence in 1960. That year, the Congo elected its first prime minister, Patrice Lumumba. But months later, he was unseated in a US and Belgium-backed coup. In early 1961, Lumumba was assassinated under Belgian supervision. The coup launched the country into a decades-long dictatorship. Around 10 million Congolese people are thought to have died during King Leopold's occupation and looting of the Congo. Despite this devastation, calls for reparations have gone unanswered. To this day, throughout Belgium can be found the monuments King Leopold built on a foundation of inconceivable cruelty. When European colonizers arrived in modern-day Zimbabwe, they saw the ruins of a splendid ancient city. This couldn't have been constructed by indigenous people, they thought. Learn how they were proven wrong, and what scientists have discovered about the city of Great Zimbabwe with this video.
All right, so with that, our video is done. And your video notes are done for this unit. Congrats, we are all done with Unit 6 in terms of lecture, that very fast crash course. Now, make sure that you complete your Google form, answering all the questions, meeting the requirements. Make sure too that your Google Notes, I keep doing that, oh my goodness. Your guided notes is completed, ready to be turned in by May 16th. Keep making it through the playlist. I hope you're doing well. If you have any questions, let me know.